All right, Troy Jent, not only pastor of CT, but my pastor, and certainly glad to have you on here.
Well, it's an honor to be here, man. Let's
Good.
go.
Yeah, let's go. Give us a little background on Troy and how did you end up doing what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I actually never had any intention of being a pastor. I went to Murray State, thinking I was going to go into business somehow. Had an advertising marketing degree, and ended up going into the family business after college. And ministry was not on, or pastoring was not on my mind. But in my 20s, I just kept growing closer and closer to the Lord. And I think by my late 20s, I figured out that I think I'm supposed to be doing some kind of full time ministry, and was really drawn to pastoring, but actually didn't become a pastor until I was 38. My dad who was also a business guy, planted a church when he was 60 years old, and first church he had ever pastored. Started with 12 people in Princeton, Kentucky, and by then I knew that I wanted to be a pastor, but I didn't really think about Princeton, Kentucky. I was thinking someplace bigger, probably. And but we helped my dad get the church started. Long story short, he got sick, and God called us to a church in Princeton, Kentucky, and so we've been here for 16 years. And what started out as a small church has grown, and God's, as you know, has done some pretty amazing things here. So.
Yeah, yeah. So right when Jess and I started coming to CTE, we were at two services, but we were in the old building, and
Right.
all had a huge transformation of, we're building this new building to house us all and to expand. And tell me what that was like.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's probably the sixth building project we've been through since I've been pastor. So we started out in a rented building downtown, and then when I became the pastor, we were there for about a year after I became the pastor, and we realized we were outgrowing that space. So we bought the old Eagles Club in Princeton. And if you're from this area, it was Princeton used to be a dry county, and so this was the wettest spot in town. An old, like I said, an Eagles Club, and so we bought that building and totally transformed it. And I had never been a part of a big church, so I'd always been in little churches. And so the first sanctuary we had in the Eagles Club building, it seated right at 200 people. And in my mind, I thought that's all we'll ever need. Most churches in America are less than 100 people. So I'm thinking if we have 200, that's huge. And well, even in that building, we began to grow, and so then we knocked out a wall where we could get about 280 seats, and that was the sanctuary when you came. It seated 280. We might be able to squeeze 300 people in there. And then we were at two services. And so it seems like from the day I became pastor, we've been in some kind of either a renovation or a building project. We built the Life Center, and then we bought the Legacy Center and built that. And so this sanctuary, the new sanctuary is a 600 seat sanctuary. And again, I thought 600 seats, that ought to do us for a long time. And then here we are, once again, going two services in that building. As far as the process of building, that was kind of my background. Being in a family business, we were always building there, some kind, whether it was building houses or building. We were just always in a project there. So the building side was kind of my background. So I never shied away from that. But this was a pretty good sized project.
Hmm. How did you know early on that you've shared your story before of kind of what you went through and that you said that from day one it wasn't that I'm going to be a pastor. You had other plans in mind. Can you explain that, this kind of that transformation of how you went from, I've got other plans in mind, but then God said, this is the plan I have for you?
Yeah. Well, I think in college, I had after the summer after my freshman year, I had a kind of an all-in moment with the Lord, where I basically I had been doing life my way, and I surrendered everything to Him. I said, Lord, I'll give you my life, and had this incredible experience with the Lord. But again, when I said I give you my life, I never dreamed that meant pastoring is just, here's my life, I'll do whatever you want. And so after that, I just was focusing on business. I think I was kind of like, Lord, bless my plan. I just kind of, I wanted to honor God in what I did and be a good Christian, be a good person. But it was kind of like I made my plans and was asking the Lord to bless them. But He just began to shift my heart, and to where I really, really, I always, I wanted to be a good businessman that also did ministry and supported the kingdom and teach Sunday school, something like that. And but God just began to shift my heart, where ministry actually began to consume my mind, and making disciples and really building the kingdom. It was like that's where my mind was just consumed with that. And to the point that I thought, you know what, I think I'm supposed to pastor. And so I began to prepare in that direction, even though there weren't any open doors. I just started preparing that way, at the same time running a business and raising a family and all that. So, and then when the door opened by my dad getting sick, ultimately we walked through that.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, even then, I was still bivocational. So, by then I've got 3 kids. The church is really small. And so I'm still working full time and pastoring a church full time. So I had 2 full-time jobs and raising a family and all that. So
Yeah.
did that till the church grew to about 200. And then it was like, I can't do both anymore. And so began to kind of throw almost all my attention into pastoring the church.
Right. Right. We just got back from LA on outreach. I know outreach is big, a big part of CT.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of give your thoughts on what outreach means to you? I know you have done a bunch of missions, and I
Yeah.
just came back from my first one. So, what did the impact the Dream Center in LA have on you, and just missions in general?
Yeah. Well, the mission is, Jesus said, He came to seek and save the lost. So I think it's easy to lose sight of that, but that is the mission, to reach those who that don't know the Lord yet. And so he said to go into all the world and make disciples. And so that is the heart behind everything we do, is to reach people and then make disciples. And so in the beginning with our church, again, we started with 12 people, but one of the first thing my dad did is he went and bought an old van. And we went around and started picking up kids in the neighborhood. And he had actually heard Matthew Barnett, who founded the Dream Center. Matthew Barnett had a statement. He said, if you will go after the people that nobody else wants, then God will send you the people that everybody wants. And so that was the focus of our church early on. We were going after people that were unchurched and no other churches were going after. And God just blessed that. I believe that when you go after God's heart and do the things that His heart is after, then you'll see God's hand. And so, we've seen God's hand of blessing financially and every other way on our church. But I think it's because we have His heart for the poor and for those who are away from Him, the lost. And when you focus on that, I think you see God's blessing. And I think that's one of the secrets of the reason God has blessed our church so much, is because we have had that missions, that outreach mindset. And so early on, my dad gave me a book called The Church That Never Sleeps, that Matthew Barnett wrote. It was the story of the Dream Center. I believe he started that around 30 years ago, if I remember right. And so before there ever was a CT, there was a Dream Center, and that heart of reaching people. And so for me to go to the Dream Center last week was a dream come true. It's something that I've wanted to do for, over 20 years. And definitely lived up to my expectations. I wish I'd have gone when I was younger because I'll be honest with you, it took me about a week to recover from that trip. I think that's something you should do in your 20s, not in your 50s. But anyway,
Yeah,
I'm glad we went.
yeah, absolutely.
We
The
worked hard, didn't we?
we did. Got a lot of steps in, got a lot of miles, and
How many miles was it that you said?
I think it was on average 22,000 steps and about 10 miles a day.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot for me. So anyway,
That's a lot for me. And, you know, talk about just outreach and trying to reach people I think when Jesse and I moved to Princeton, I would say that I was lost. We were looking for something greater than what we had. It's not to say that we had a bad life in Bowling Green. Um, you know, we both had good positions, and you know, our kids were doing well, but I think we were searching for something more, especially when COVID hit.
hmm,
And then, you know, for 2.5 years, it's like, why did we move to Princeton, Kentucky? I don't know what our path is. I don't know what God's will is for us until we found CT. And
hmm.
from then on, it's like I know why we were called here. It's to be a part of this church and to do
Wow.
whatever calling we have in CT. So I certainly appreciate, you know, your all's work, your all's calling,
Hmm.
you know, all the different ministries we have at CT. It's been a blessing on both myself and Jesse and our kids. And you know, our best friends are there. My kids' best friends are there. Our kids go to, you know, homeschool school there. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
our
you guys were certainly a huge part and dove in, in every way as far as serving and in the church, outside the church. And so, appreciate all you guys have done.
mhm. Don't want to. You were talking this past Sunday about just the craziness of CT. That is that a stigma that you feel that we're the crazy church, or is that?
Becky, actually, my wife, she corrected me on that. I think I said that you were in first service on
Yeah,
Sunday.
yeah.
I think I said that twice on Sunday, and and she corrected me on that, and so I think I left that out in second service. But I think early on, when the church was really young and nobody really knew who we were, what we were about, and we're in a very Southern Baptist area. Most of the churches here are Southern Baptist, and so anything that's not Southern Baptist is different in our area. And because we do believe, that the gifts of the Spirit are for today, some people misunderstand that, and so I think I'm always self-conscious, or at least conscious or aware of the fact that in our area, um, um, there I always wonder how people perceive those things, and so I try to do a good job of teaching what the Bible has to say about those things. And I believe that you can be spirit filled and not spooky, and so we've always tried to take away the spookiness of those things, and and realize, hey, it's biblical. And yet we never wanted to be a weird or crazy church, and I think we've succeeded in that. So
Yeah, well, like I told you after service on Sunday, it's when I first went to the first Sunday prayer group.
yeah,
I had a lot in my heart, and it's like, well, if I want others to pray for me, I might as well join and pray for that too. So
yeah,
go to Sunday prayer, and you know, I'm hearing things, and it's like, wow, I didn't know this is what it was going to be. And
yeah.
you said, you know, what was it that you were we crazy, or did you just embrace it and join the crazy? And it's like, well,
Yeah, I think what I've heard some people say is that this is really different. This may be a little crazy, but I think I like it. It
yes,
gives that kind of feeling of this is, and for us, it might be somebody coming in and people are lifting their hands or praying out loud, or for many people that's not what their culture was like in the church that they grew up in, you know. So
Right, right. And
yeah,
I was actually talking to a friend that I didn't grow up Catholic. I was raised in a Catholic school as a Protestant, but it's very much just, they have their ways, and it's very
sure, yeah,
much this is what we do. And so to come to CT, and it's so much more freeing of I can worship and pray and celebrate however
yeah,
God wants me to, and nobody's looking
right, right.
looking other ways. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
um
It's really a interesting mix of people. We have people from so many different backgrounds and denominations, and we just had a membership class Sunday, this past Sunday, and probably most of the people in there came from a Baptist background, but then also, there was Catholic and Methodist and Church of Christ, and so just we're just all over the board, where people come from.
yeah, I think Derek Fuqua was passing out cards that, it says like God loves all people and so do we.
Yeah, yeah,
Like that can't be a more true statement than
exactly. Yeah,
it's but come
yeah.
come all.
Jesus simplified it when he said, "Love God and love people," and that's always what we've tried to do. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, Transitioning a little bit to sport, I always thought if Jesus is here walking amongst us in the flesh, he would be a huge sports fan, right?
yeah, well, that's where the people are. So
Well, and the same way that politics divides everybody, I feel like sports it brings us together. You could have a
right,
group of Kentucky fans, half Republican, half Democrat, but
mm,
if they're watching a game, they're all together and they're all in. I think Jesus would,
right.
would love that, right?
Yeah, I don't know why not. I'm trying to think of an example of that in the Bible. He spent most of his time in small town Nazareth and those things. But what I do pick up on Jesus is he loved to be where the people were. He loved to be where the common person was, he and so yeah, I think he would enjoy just being around people. I think that he would somehow redeem it. He would use it, as the opportunity to to share the message, why he came. So I think that's cool that you've integrated it into your podcast, because obviously, that's where people's interests are, where guys, especially where their minds are and their interests are. So if you can bring it into people's lives and bring mesh that with the gospel, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you mentioned it maybe one or two times, a few times during sermon. How did you grow up? Kentucky fan or sports fan?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Kentucky, so we don't have professional sports here. So if you grow up in Kentucky, there's a real good chance you're a Kentucky fan. And so I grew up in Henderson, Kentucky, and I had relatives from Indiana, so there used to be a big Kentucky Indiana rivalry, and it was just fun to pick a side, and so for us in our house, it was just you only had three channels, and so not a whole lot on. But when Kentucky came on, we'd all gather around the TV and watch Kentucky play more basketball than football. Now I enjoy watching Kentucky football too, but growing up, it was mainly Kentucky basketball. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You're a Murray State racer, right?
I am. Yeah, I went to Murray State, and now my son just graduated from UK, so um, that was pretty cool. But yeah, Murray State racer. So if Murray State and Kentucky are playing, that's a tough one for me. So
That's all right. I'm also a hilltopper, so I
yeah,
understand. I
you get
understand
that. Yeah,
the back and forth. And real quick, just talking about your son. How does I know a lot of pastors that they're overly harsh on trying to get their kids to grow up and whatnot. How is raising your children, being a pastor, but also
mm,
just trying to distinguish. All right, I'm a pastor to the church, but I'm also a father to
yeah,
your children.
yeah. I have three kids. They're all adults now. My son's the youngest, and so my daughters are both married, and I've got a grandbaby now. And so, when we became the pastors, we already had kids, and so we had a life. And that was one of the reasons I was bivocational for a while, is because we were trying not to totally rock their world, disrupt everything that they were doing. And so we tried to make life normal as them as possible. And I think they would, if you asked them, they would say we had a lot of fun. We did fun things. They would probably also say that I was strict, especially my daughters. By the time my son came around, he's a few years younger than them, and they wore us down pretty good. So they were always saying we were way easier on him, which I think that's a lot of times with the third child.
Sure.
That he had it easy and we were way easier on him. But we always tried to, and I see you're doing this with your kids. We always tried to make our kids a part of what we were doing. So if we came to church, we always involved them, and so tried to make it fun and as much as possible. So I don't think they ever like had a begrudging attitude toward the ministry or church. Um, I was very intentional, at being at their games and being a big part of their life outside of church, and trying to allow them as much as possible to have a normal life. Because of my schedule as a pastor, they never got to do travel ball and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, I don't think it hurt them any. So
Mhm. Yeah, we try to do the same. And if you see those kids running around, sometimes I'll be like, whose kids are those?
yeah,
Somebody come get their parents, call their mom.
exactly. Yeah, I look at your kids, and they're always around, and they don't seem to mind it. They seem like
Right.
they're having a good time, and so that's what we always try to do. We try to, as much as possible, make it fun and include them in what we do. And never, I never threw out over them that they were, hey, I'm a pastor, you better act up or act right. We always just we did have a high standard for them, but it's just because we're Christians, not because we were pastors or we were worried about what people would think. So
Yeah. Well, I certainly think your authenticity, both on the stage at the pulpit and talking now, and if we go to lunch or whatever, your authenticity is the same throughout, and I think that makes the mark of a great pastor, that you're yourself, and you.
well, my kids would always, they would have definitely called me out on it, if I was ever not the same or whatever. So I always wanted it to be that if somebody pulled my wife or my kids aside and they said, "What's your dad really like?" That they was like, "I don't know, what you see is what you get." I'm probably a little crazier at home, but other than that, you know, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you doing this. Text me sometime that, maybe we can get back together and play some golf. I feel a lot less guilty, when my pastor asked me to play golf, because I can tell Jesse it's like, man
Yeah,
of the
you got
word,
to.
I've got
You have
to.
to. Well, you're a great golfer. Have got it. I'm just a beginner, but I like to play. I have a good time. So,
Yeah, I think great is a tremendous overstatement of game.
hey, compared to me, you're a great
Awesome.
golfer. So,
Troy, well, I appreciate you doing this, and
yeah,
look forward to having more conversations like this. And anytime we have any type of outreach or whatnot that we want to promote, I would
yeah,
love to jump on here and just give our quick kind of outlook on things. So
that's
appreciate you
awesome.
doing
Well, I
this.
wish you all the success, man. It's great. You're doing a great job. So,
Awesome. Thank you,
all
Troy.
right, all right, buddy. See you, man.
See ya.